So I'm very excited about our next three speakers, all powerful women. And first, I'd like to invite Kelly Lichter to come up. And she, as you know, is chair of our Collier County School Boards. And she will give us an update. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies. Great to see you, and gentlemen. I don't want to exclude you. Anyway, how many of you have been following what's been going on at the Collier County School Board? Show of hands. All right, excellent. So as you all know, we just appointed the superintendent, went through a lengthy superintendent search. This was, in my view, based on what was done, was a very transparent process that included the community. We had sessions where community members could attend with HYA was the company that we hired to assist with the search. We were able to take community input, the board's input, parent input, staff, student input in creating a profile of what are we looking for the next superintendent. We ended up getting 45 applications that came in, which I was actually surprised that we had that large of a number, considering there are several superintendent openings across the state and across the country. We pared that list down to a final four. Eventually, it came down to a final four that we interviewed, and then pared it down to two finalists that went through 2 hours each of interview questions, presentations. Then the board had one final day, one-on-one with the candidates, and then we met. If you watched that meeting, there were over 100 public speakers, times 3 minutes apiece. It was a long night. I know there's been a lot of talk about my vote in this, so I will address it here today. It was a 3-2 decision, so as you can see that there was a little bit of division in terms of who was selected. If you hadn't watched the meeting, I recommend that you visit the Collier County website. All of our meetings are televised. You can watch them live, but the recordings are available. I explained in my comments that night, I gave a historical perspective of where we have been. So I will share it. If you've heard it already, I apologize, but I think it's important for me to say that historically, the superintendent really controlled everything. Like, she was a very powerful person, the previous superintendent. And the board, unfortunately, in my view, abdicated their responsibilities and their constitutional role and handed it over to the superintendent. And that was done even through policies. I think there has been a fear and why there was so much angst in this hire. And one thing I want to remind everybody is that when we got a conservative board majority, that in and of itself was the change that we so desperately needed. It was the change to get the board back in their constitutional role in directing the superintendent, because we are the elected representatives. We represent all of you. And if you have a lopsided relationship where the superintendent is the person controlling everything, that's not an elected representative situation that we have on our hands. So I think going into it, there was this fear of this position is so important, but at the same time, you have to remember the change that happened in November was that we reestablished our constitutional role. In the last 5 to 6 months, we had been working closely with the interim superintendent because Kamala Patton actually was retiring. She was actually supposed to leave in June of this year. We mutually agreed on an earlier exit. What I can tell you is that decision in and of itself was really the best decision we made at the time, because we as a board were able to work with the superintendent, the interim that we had appointed, and starting to launch these changes. I mentioned previously at a meeting I was here, we redid the mission and vision statement. And that was important because we want people to get behind this mission and vision, because I don't think people really understood what is our mission. What is the vision of the Collier County School District? And I think we lost sight of that. I think we lost sight of really the purpose of education, and that we are educating human beings. We are impacting the hearts, minds, and souls of children. So I think that was an important piece by redoing the mission and vision statement. But we also held a work session where we said, what are our priorities as a board? What have we heard throughout the last, year plus of campaigning? What were big issues that people were talking about? So we were able to lay out a plan as a board and put together 5 priority areas. Number 1 being academics, school culture, fiscal responsibility, student conduct, and human resources, because we do have teacher retention issues. So we established those 5 priorities, and then subsequently we've had meetings where we are addressing each priority in and of itself. So we've already had 2 meetings just on the academic priorities alone. And what are those changes? And so while I know I have disappointed many of my voters because of my vote in the what they call the establishment insider candidate, I can tell you that simply she's not the quote establishment insider candidate. Yes, she has been in the district for many years, but I will tell you, I've gotten to know her, and what I'm asking you today is, for those of you who are upset about the decision, take an opportunity to actually get to know her and actually give this an opportunity to see this unfold, because I think the last several months have proven that the changes that we said we were going to make are already happening. We're making major changes that we have never seen in this district before. So I ask that we give it a chance. I also look at it as a fresh start. You can see the morale across the district, not just at the administrative center where we have offices and work, but you see it in the schools. We're visiting the schools. We're talking to principals. The morale has increased drastically. So I felt with the momentum that we already had going for us, why change course? And I feel very confident in keeping this momentum going, making these positive changes that are really going to impact our students. So at the end of the day, it wasn't a political decision for me. And so I ask that you go back, watch the meeting, and listen to the interviews of the candidates if you're still not sure of why the decision was made. But again, back to the fresh start. I ask that we all look at this as a tremendous opportunity to really transform Collier County. I've said it from the beginning. I think with the resources that we have, the committed people that just live in this community that care about our kids, we could make Collier County not just top in the state. I'm saying we could be a model for the entire country of what we can do here. So with that said, I just ask that all this noise that's out there, all this unnecessary gossip and rumors and pitting people against one another, it's really, at the end of the day, is that good for our kids? And so I ask, are you on the side of benefiting our children, or are you on the side of just being an obstructionist for the sake of it? At the end of the day, again, I'm one of 5 people. I had to make my decision for the reasons I felt were in the best interest of the entire school district. So for me, I looked at the big picture. So at this time, if there are any questions, I'd like to take any questions from the audience, because I know this is a big issue. Yes.
I have a question about, at the beginning of your talk, you talked about the retention rate of our teachers. What are we doing to help our teachers in the classroom? We understand that sometimes it's a discipline problem with the students, and I've met teachers in the community that are now doing nails because they said, I was a teacher for 7 years, and when I would call a parent and say, I'm having a problem with your son, your daughter, the parents would be worse to deal with than a child. So is there some support system for the teachers? Are there counselors? What's going on?
And that's a great question. So she's asking about the teacher retention, job satisfaction, really. I honestly believe that comes from the top at their administrative level at the schools. And that's one of the areas, that's a board priority, is hitting the human resources aspect. How can we improve the lives of our teachers? Since we took office and appointed the interim, she's already removed some programs that have been added on the teachers' plates over the course of the last decade. There were so many educational fads and programs that would be dumped on them, and nothing was ever done with Fidelity. They try it for a couple years, and then, oh, that doesn't work, so we're going to dump that and try something else. And this was a constant cycle. And teachers were like, oh my gosh, this is just too much. This is overwhelming. And then the discipline part, which is board priority number 5, the student conduct. We just as a board reevaluated the student code of conduct. There were some things that the previous superintendent requested that the board become more lax on. We are tightening up the student code of conduct. So I think going into next year, like when I say it's a fresh start, I really feel that all these changes, we're going to start fresh in the fall, in August. Like, we're tightening up the discipline so that the teachers feel they have the support from their administration, that if it's discipline issues and we're tightening up that they do feel that they've got the backing. And that, I think, and this was interesting. I ran into one of the HR employees yesterday at the administrative office, and she's been there for years. And she said this so far, at this time of the year in May, she said, we're getting less teacher report, like they have to fill out a paper if they're leaving the district. She said it's lower right now than she's ever seen it. So I'm thinking that's a good sign moving forward. She's been there a long time, and she said, we're still getting some, but she's like, not like it's been in the past. So I think that says a lot in my view. Yes.
Can you talk a little about security in schools in Collier County? What's being done there or been done in the past?
Yeah, great question. So as you all know, we have a great partnership with the local sheriff's office. So we have armed deputies in every school. Mr. Mosier here, he's really taken the lead on the Guardian program. This has been an ongoing discussion. There's been meetings between our administrative staff and the local sheriff's office, and really making this even more robust in terms of safety and security. We've done a lot, even before we came on the board, as far as single entry, but there's always room for improvement on security measures. So that's always happening in the background. A lot of that stuff doesn't obviously come out to the public because we don't want everyone to know what those security measures are. And I saw Mr. Ed there has a question. Go ahead.
Just want to state first that I have witnessed, at least in a small way, the change in atmosphere and morale, and it's really great. My question has to do with reading. It's been reported that so many children are below where they should be on reading. I know you've instituted a new program, I think 5 schools or something like that, to address that.
No, that's the math. That's the math. But yeah.
What do you have to address what you have in mind for increasing the reading?
Great question. What are we doing to increase literacy? So as we've been meeting on the academic priorities, one of the things that really took a back seat was a really strong explicit phonics program. We do that at Mason Classical Academy, and if you look at our scores and literacy rates, they're significantly higher. I think if we hit that hard with our K1 and 2 students, you're going to see an increase there. The other piece is we're reinstituting required novels. So we are going to have every grade level beginning in 2nd grade reading actual novels as a class. Science and history, I'm asking them to change social studies. I want it to be called history. That's taken a back seat over the last decade because of high stakes testing. But if you're actually teaching heavy content and reading the text in the sciences and history, that only is going to increase the literacy. It's only going to help the reading across the board. So we're also, I've been working with staff on creating, instead of the Sunshine State Reader List that they incentivize it for kids to read outside of school, we're creating a Collier Classics list instead of the Sunshine State Readers, so that we can put in front of the kids really great book titles that maybe they wouldn't have thought to read, because sometimes the newer, flashier books may seem interesting, but they're not really the quality material, vocabulary, complex sentence structure that these classics will provide our students. So we're establishing that list as well. So I think we're doing a lot in terms of improving the academics and literacy. So I ask that people just, give us an opportunity. We're working hard, and we're really committed to improving the academics for our students. Any other questions, or we got to go? Okay, got to go. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.